tears in my eyes. Here is where the story ends. This is goodbye. Knowing me, knowing you. There is nothing we can do. Knowing me, knowing you. We just have to face it this time. This time we really breaking up is never easy. I know, but I had to go. This time I know in me, knowing you, it's the best I can do. Memories, good days, bad days, they'll be with me always. In these old familiar rooms, children would play. Now there's only emptiness, nothing to say. Knowing me, knowing you, there is nothing we can do. Knowing me, knowing you, we just have to face it this time. We really breaking up is never easy. I know, but I had to go. This time I know, knowing me, knowing you, it's the best I can do. Knowing me, knowing you, there is nothing we can do. Knowing me, knowing you, we just have to face it this time. We're through. This time we really breaking up is never easy. I know, but I had to go. This time I knowing me, knowing you, it's the best I can do.
Okay. All right. Okay, everybody, welcome to We Are Live. This is We Are Fucked Radio. I have two special guests tonight, and we might have a third special guest. You know, I really want to say thank you to Big Keebs, aka Kelly, for making this collaboration happen. We're gonna have a conversation tonight, and I'm looking forward to it because I'm gonna learn as well. So I definitely want to introduce our guest. You already know the star of episode 12 of Paradigm. We got Kelly in the building. Kelly,
Hey, how's it going?
they
That's so,
they want to hear your down south accent. They want to hear
I kind of have to like get a attitude going to get. I'll try to do it at some point.
Now, once again, I gotta shout you out for making this collab happen. This is an individual that seems like they have just a wealth of knowledge to where you just sit down, you shut the fuck up, and you listen. So I want to introduce, a content creator, truth seeker, a grown man, RD. Welcome, RD. Could you just tell the people who is RD?
Who is RD? Well, thank you first of all for having me on my show, your show rather. I've been sort of looking forward to this collab for a little while now, and again, thanks to Kelly for making it happen. Who's sort of been a viewer of mine, sort of almost since the infancy or the genesis of my YouTubing career, if I can sort of call that. And when I first sort of started out in my early days, I went by the name of the Thrift Store Prepper. And I sort of started making videos about how to sort of prep if you're, on a minimum wage, unemployed, or, don't got much money to work with. The dollar store or, no frills or cheap supermarket, you can sort of build yourself quite a substantial pantry with sort of spending $10, $20 a week on sort of very simple canned shelf staple items, and sort of from those humble beginnings, I sort of grew that channel to about 4,500 people. Before community strikes, copyright strikes, lawsuit threats against my channel pretty much shut that shit down. And YouTube now are requiring me to sort of give them verification of who I am in order to access that channel. So I relaunched as Reality Decoded, which was sort of solely conspiracies and mysteries. I tend not to use the word truth that much, although we are all looking for answers, we are all sort of looking for truth, but I do try to sort of reject labeling systems as much as I sort of can. But this sort of Reality Decoded was more deeper dives, stuff that I'm a lot more interested in. Sort of conspiracies and mysteries has been stuff that has interested me since I was sort of 11, 12 years old, and that was nearly 40 years ago, actually over 40 years ago, thinking about it. And funny enough, it was movies, in particular the movies E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind that I sort of watched as a very young boy, that introduced me to the government conspiracy towards aliens. And are they covering shit up? Do they know about stuff that we don't? And are they sort of letting us know through movies that they know something that we don't know about? And that sort of really introduced me, I guess, to go into the library and looking for UFO cover-up stories or UFO sort of sightings. And back then when there wasn't an internet, you did have to sort of go to the library or obscure bookstores to sort of find this content. And there's also sort of stuff like the Bermuda Triangle and Bigfoot and some of these sort of more harmless sort of conspiracies and mysteries that interested me as a youngster. But eventually those sort of pathways and avenues of research led to the sort of new world order and more nefarious and dastardly conspiracies and agendas to depopulate the world and usher in a new world order. And sort of when I first got introduced to this, it seemed very... I need an awful lot of salt to take into consideration with some of this sort of stuff that I'm reading in regards to sort of the New World Order and the Illuminati and all these sort of networks of organizations and secret societies that are meddling together to bring to fruition the centuries old plan of a one world order. And one of the sort of early concepts I was introduced to was a paperless society and a cashless society. And sort of back then, in the 1980s, when I first started work, when I left school, on a Thursday, we got a brown envelope with hard cash, and that was our wages. Within a couple of years of employment, all of a sudden, my employer wanted my bank details to sort of deposit my money directly into the bank. So I don't get it, it goes straight to the bank, and then I have to go to the ATM and make withdrawals. But it was sort of around this time that people introduced me to the concept of a paperless and cashless society. And in the future, people are going to send letters to people without pens and papers. Well, how are they going to do that? Electronically. People are going to pay for things without using cash. How are they going to use that? Well, they're going to have a little card that they're going to tap on things. And, this seemed radical and sort of stuff from science fiction. And when I started seeing these things happen, the introduction of like email and debit cards, credit cards, people using cash less and less, it become less sort of entertainment and enjoyable pastime reading some of this stuff to becoming a survival guide. You need to know this shit because sooner or later this is coming to a doorstep near you. And here we are in 2024, and it's looking like the new world order isn't that far away. If not, it's already here. It just hasn't really been solidified, if you know what I mean. But I hope that sort of answers a little bit who RD is. Question I wasn't really prepared for. Sorry about that. Monologue.
That was a great answer. Kelly, could you kind of speak about what about RD's content drew you towards him?
Well, unless I'm remembering this wrong, I'm pretty sure that when I first met RD, it was at one of the YouTube cults that I broke free from a long time ago, Marfugal, right? Isn't that how? That's when we first met over there, right?
Yes, I believe so. It's sort of in the aftermath of being a guest on Marfugal, I suddenly had an influx of subscribers, one of which was Kelly, and that was around 5, coming on 6 years ago now.
Yeah, God, that was a long time ago. Yeah, so anyway, I met him that way through Thrift Store Prepper, which was great. But I mean, I like the prepping stuff, but the way that I look at it is I feel like you really need to be more prepared in your mind and your soul, because, you could make sure that you have all kinds of things stored away. And what if something happens while you're out and about and you can't even make it back to your house? Like what you carry with you from place to place, which is your heart and soul, is what you need to be prepared in, basically. And so when he went on to doing Reality Decoded, it really resonated with me because he goes like on a deeper dive than a normal deep dive. So I just really appreciate that. Oh God, I just swallowed wrong. Sorry.
You coughing up some lung better there.
A jelly bean tried to take Kelly out.
Oh my God, I am actually eating milk duds. I am.
We definitely got a lot of topics to cover tonight. We don't have that much time, but we want to make this time impactful. We want to talk about this devil's comet that they're saying we're going to be able to see with the naked eye during the solar eclipse on April 8th. Also, I want to talk about Building 6. I just, I'm gonna be honest. I really, when I was growing up, the adults around me were having conversations of it being, a staged event. So I never even did a deep dive. I thought the collective knew that it was bullshit. So I never did a deep dive until recently. And so we're gonna have a conversation about Building 6. This is the first time I ever heard about Building 6. And also we're gonna talk about, is America trying to start World War III, kind of like using ISIS to attack Russia. Okay, but before we get into the topics, I gotta introduce the big dog. Okay, you look scary as hell, Rich.
How do I look scary?
I can only see your eyes.
That's because it's dark in the truck.
Let's shout out Rich, the big dog, the OG of the channel. Somebody I always throw around this word master teacher. They don't like it though. So I'm excited to have this combination of everybody on the panel tonight. Am I allowed to call y'all truth seekers? I know y'all don't like that word truth sometimes, but I got a lot of respect for people on the panel. Go ahead, Kelly.
And I mean, to me, I'm not gonna let that word go. I'm not gonna let it get perverted. I don't care if it sounds cringe. That is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the truth.
So I want to get into the conversation. Rich was on the phone. Me and Rich was on the phone a couple days ago, And shout out Rich for supporting the channel and always giving me this information that it will be hard to get anywhere else. So Rich, I did a show last night on the red heifer, and you was explaining to me about how the eclipse, it basically formed an X, and the X went over Texas, and that's where they had 5 red heifers. Can you explain the kind of like the conversation we were having off air, as far as you mentioned a double cataclysm and the CME? Apparently today there was
X
a huge,
flares.
yeah, apparently today there was a huge event that I didn't even realize was going on.
But it's
Somebody in
not.
the comments said,
I don't really focus on the X that went over Texas. I mean, I guess you can, but what's more important is the X that crosses. It goes up towards New York, and it crosses down into Texas, and the one it comes over Florida, and crosses up around somewhere around Oregon or northern California, up in that area. See, because X marks the spot. Now, everybody says that it's Carbondale, Illinois, right? And they bring up all the Egyptian towns and all that, and all the prophecies, the Christian prophecies that that are in I guess in those areas that you can go. I mean, we could find correlations between everything, but every time I look at that X, I see Cairo, Illinois. And, you know, first, most people don't know that the X means Chi, XI, or Chi, or Christ, right? And, I mean, you can look this up. Look up X, and the meaning of Christ. This is where Constantine himself said that he's seen a vision in the sky, right? A vision in the sky, and it's the Cairo, Illinois. Do you see all the connections that go with this?
Yeah, I mean, you're mentioning the Egyptian sounding names, and there does seem to be a pattern in these sort of events taking place in the sort of United States, that they take place in places that don't sound very American. And, it started off in East Palestine last year with the train derailment. At the same time, they alleged spy balloon was flying overhead that they had knowledge of, that was from China. And funny enough, all the ingredients of that particular psychological operational staged event, whatever it was, were from the plot of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, they staged a train derailment that leaked hazardous materials that warranted a statewide evacuation. And they did this in order to sort of usher in the sort of UFOs, as if you are familiar with that movie, it takes place at Devil's Tower, is it in Wyoming?
Yeah.
Which is a neighboring state of Idaho, I believe. I'm not sure if my geography is correct there, but it's within that neck of the woods, I believe. Not that that's there, but sort of fiction somehow does prepare us for our future. And you're talking about the X. I actually did a sort of quick surface scrim video the other day on this eclipse. There seems to be an awful lot of attention, an awful lot of warnings, and an awful lot of language used within these articles and news reports
Sure,
I'm hearing about it.
but a lot of what you're hearing about that, you're just hearing about it now, right? I mean,
Yes and
you.
no,
Well,
because
I'm talking about okay, first off, whenever they have formed America, do you think it's any coincidence that, first off, the eclipse, as it goes down and through Texas, goes down through Corpus Christi, which basically means the body of Christ. On the upper section of it, it goes through Virginia and Maryland. I don't know if anybody ever really put the connection together, but they're talking about the Virgin Mary. Even the fact that where the X marks the spot is the New Madrid fault line. And the New Madrid comes from the word new mother. St. Louis itself, we're talking about Saint Light, because Lou is light. Saint Light. Even Chicago, what you're talking about chi, a cog and a circle. Chicago. Right? But if anybody has ever studied alchemy and ever heard of Fulcanelli had written a book about the Gothic cathedrals, and he wrote a book on the cyclic cross of Henday. And in that, he said, X marks the spot. And if you go look up the cross, you can almost see where, he's talking about Peru and the giants of Peru. He's talking about the giants in the United States. And you see the X in the center of the cross. And the point that he was saying is that in the age of Aquarius, that X marks the spot. Even in America, you can look at the cross and you can actually see it's the angry sun and Aquarius. The angry sun that's going to take place in Aquarius. They knew this way back in the 13th and 14th and 15th century that this cycle was going to happen. And you can look at that cross and you can almost make out that he is talking about Americas, the Americas. See, they taught us in school and shit that it was just the indigenous people that were here, in America, and then Christopher Columbus discovered America. But Christopher Columbus had Irish people that brought him over here. There was black people and there was indigenous people that lived here way before Christopher Columbus got here. And the Irish people would come in. They was actually the Irish, were close to the Egyptians, and they would come here and they would actually do trade. So I think they knew about these eclipses that were going to take place. Even if you play that clip that I sent you, Loki, you will see that for a long time, even the Rosicrucians knew exactly that during the age of Aquarius that this was going to take place. We can talk about languages and stuff. Even in the cyclic cross of Henday, they talked about a bird language, which St. Francis knew about. And he also explained it exactly well that we are all, we all know the language of the dictator. You know what I'm saying? So there's the language of the birds is the language of nature, which is alchemy.
And I want to hop in here. Definitely, Rich T. I want to introduce you to RD, a fellow content creator. Everybody here, everybody here is basically a content creator. I mean, Kelly, I'm pretty sure you got videos on your channel. So I have a lot of respect for everybody here. So, the floor is yours, RD.
Yeah, I mean, sort of a lot of the sort of biblical stuff, Bible prophecies, I'm a little bit familiar with, but not too, I don't have much expertise sort of on, but there was some very interesting stuff. But with regards to the sort of X marking the spot within sort of Texas, there are 4 counties that sort of surround the sort of X that have already declared disaster 3 weeks in advance, like prior to the eclipse. And there's an awful lot of, Homeland Security, FEMA types of advising people to stock up on food, stock up on gas, make sure you've been to the ATM and got as much sort of cash as you can possibly need for any emergency, have sort of enough food and supplies and medication for at least 4 days. There's a chance that there's going to be no internet or wireless coverage, so have plans to communicate with people via landlines, or if you haven't got a landline, know where the nearest one is. 2 years ago, FEMA run a drill, an exercise for various scenarios regarding this coming eclipse. And last year, FEMA they were running a shitload of drills, to be honest with you, last year. What weren't they running drills for? But one of the drills that they were running went under the name of Frosty Force, which is a double F, make of that what you will. But it was for a multi-state natural disaster scenario. And a lot of agencies have called in emergency management agencies to be on site around the time of this eclipse. Now, they may be Y2K-ing us. They might be blowing smoke up our ass, sort of making, a more terrifying event than it is really going to be. And this sort of creates a certain amount of trauma. And trauma, is a key ingredient to mind control. But it seems an awful lot of attention and preparedness and money has been spent for an eclipse, where we've had eclipses in the past for centuries, in millennia, that never seemed to warrant this much attention. Now, you're also mentioning this devil's comment, which incidentally enough comes into sight during the stages of the eclipse. It should be visible by the naked eye. And that's supposed to be fully visible by the end of the month. I think the 22nd or 23rd of the month, it should be visible in the skies. And it's going under the name of the Devil's Comet. Now, a couple of years ago, again, make of this what you will, NASA, they had the DART project. They sent a satellite up, which supposedly was a drill and an exercise that this technology was being beta tested, and it was sort of shot up to shoot a meteor in the sky or in space and thus redeflecting it so it wouldn't collide with Earth, a little bit like the plot to Armageddon, Deep Impact. And they were both remakes of the 1970s movie Meteor, which that was sort of the plot of those movies. Extinction level event was on its way, courtesy of an asteroid, and Earth had to sort of unify, put aside personal differences. The East and the West and the Chinese all sort of sided together for the common good, and the greater threat than each other was, we can be enemies, but at the moment we're facing annihilation from this comet. If we don't sort this out, none of us are going to have a planet to fight for. And the sort of unifying event is the sort of final key to the one world order. And many of these sort of disaster movies depict nations having to side along with one another to, defeat the common foe, be it an alien invasion, be it a meteorite or earthquakes, or, there's been a whole series of disaster movies. And are we about to witness another disaster live on TV? And another interesting thing that they're talking about, that there's going to be restricted internet access, which suggests to me they're going to shut it off so people can't report what they're seeing from the scenes. And they're suggesting don't go to watch it on your own reconnaissance, stay at home, watch it on social media, watch it on TV. This is a way that they can control the event. And the fact that FEMA are involved and they've been running the drills is always a red flag for me, because FEMA were in place on Monday, 10th of September 2001. And FEMA were in place on that Monday of 2001, the day before, the tower incident. And they were there to conduct an exercise drill for a terrorist attack, although it was a bioterrorist attack in the exact same spot.
Artie, I don't mean to interrupt, but can I ask you this question? Who controls FEMA? Who does FEMA?
FEMA control FEMA. FEMA, a state within them state. FEMA have every single executive order you could imagine that is pre-signed. It's a little bit like that Tom Hanks movie with the Somalian pirates, that when FEMA turn up, FEMA are in charge now, and FEMA technically are the shadow government. So a multi-state national disaster would put FEMA in charge of
basically the UN and the blue hats that I keep saying that is the reason that they're dealing with all of this immigration.
I have a different theory, which I've actually researched quite deeply regarding the migrants. Now, you mentioned the FEMA and you mentioned the United Nations and the Red Cross. That my theory is that this is extermination and this is a Holocaust about unfolding within our eyes, and mainly because the narrative that is being provided for us is the fact that they're invading. Now, the United Nations Agenda 2030 is a depopulation agenda. United Nations are very active in some of these nations that these migrants are coming from, as well as the Red Cross. And as well as FEMA. Now, in my research into this, I've got documents and PDFs from the Department of Homeland Security, from the Department of Labor, from FEMA, overseeing inspections for SS facilities, soft-sided facilities, or second stage facilities. Either way, it's SS. The FEMA program for relocating migrants is called the Shelter Service Program. Again, another SS. If anybody knows anything about history and the Holocaust, it was the SS that was responsible for relocating the migrants. And they didn't tell the migrants they were being relocated to death camps. They got told they were being relocated to ghettos. The ghettos have been rebranded and are now known as sanctuary cities. They can't call them ghettos.
It was kind of like the guy that just made the speech up in Chicago said about the same thing as what Hitler done. When the people were basically to the point where they didn't trust their government anymore, that basically they just replaced the people. It's happening.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. This is, in the aftermath of World War II, a lot of people got displaced, and we're seeing an awful lot of people being displaced now. And part of the displacement was removing the undesirables from society and relocating them to temporary housing or temporary situations prior to being relocated to the death camps. Now, I've also found in 2010 another document from FEMA authorizing the uses of mega shelter systems. And as I said, I've been to the Department of Homeland Security, and I've got protocols on how to operate labor camps. This is the PDF, the protocols of how to oversee and run the labor camps. I've also found PDFs from the Canadian government giving guidelines and protocols of how to oversee and run labor camps. And none of this stuff is hidden. You can find it using Google. You don't have to use, the secret browsers. You don't have to have multiple VPNs and stuff. You can find this information if you tend to look for it yourself. Now, I sincerely hope that I'm very, very wrong on this, but it would seem to me that some of these migrants that are arriving at the southern border aren't from Latin America. They're from Iran, they're from Syria, they're China. A lot of these refugees are being helped by the Red Cross, who also played a little bit of a part in assisting the National Socialists with delivering the Jews to the death camps eventually. And they are working in China with people who are seeking refuge under sort of the sort of people that would be undesirable in China under totalitarian dictatorships. And maybe the Red Cross are there giving them the misconception, listen, we can get you out of here into a better life. And this is what the narrative that was used to deliver the Jews out of Germany and relocate them. Look, we're going to take you out of here. We're going to take you somewhere else where you can be with your own people, and it's going to be a better situation for you. They didn't let them know that they were going to death camps. Otherwise, they would have maybe, you know, put up a little bit more resistance. But they had to sell the illusion that it was humanitarian reasons that they were relocating these people and not for extermination reasons. And history is repeating. And if it's not repeating, there's certainly a lot of rhymes. And the fact that the United States government has 3 organizations running under the SS banner dealing with migrants is more than concerning to me. Like, you would think, given their knowledge of history, they could have come up with better names for their services than things that all seem to begin and end with S.
I wanna give Kelly the floor to respond to what Rich T and RD is speaking about. Go ahead, Kelly.
Well, I mean, you know how I am. I was going to put this in the chat, but I guess I'll just say it. I just, to me, the first thing I thought of when RG said the SS and how significant that is, if you take an S and then you mirror it so it's a backward S and you put it together, you've got that 8 again, the infinity symbol. Do you understand? Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of strange, and to me, stuff like that always makes me kind of go, you know, it could be reaching, but I mean, it's like checking your math, you know, when you go, So, I mean, I think that what RD is talking about, I mean, it makes so much more sense. And I remember when he first started talking about it, I was like, oh my God, how did I not? It's funny how sometimes these things make so much sense. And a lot of times everything is in hindsight. So it's great to be able to maybe see something before it even happens, just so you can have an idea about what's going on.
So I'm gonna be a little nosy tonight. I'm gonna go to Rich, Artie, and then we're gonna go back to Kelly. Rich, what's your plan? What's your shit hit the fan plan?
Dig a hole and hide until the shit's over with. and I don't really have a plan because, you know, like I told you, I sent you the video, which is the Rosicrucians. I don't think it's a coincidence that they blew up the Georgia Guidestones as they did. Those are the Rosicrucians. Now, like I said, if you play that part, you explain that if these people have all this knowledge about the Egyptians, about frequencies and tones and all this stuff, they know all this, then obviously, whenever they made that book air, how did they know? Just like in the Bible, when Jesus told them, he said, well, look for, in the end times, go to the house of the man with the water pitcher, which means the age of Aquarius. And you'll find you will find, I can't remember if you'll find me there. What he's talking about is the same thing as what these Rosicrucians are talking about, which is the Christ consciousness. It's the same thing that Drimvalo Melchizedek tried to explain, that all of our DNA is changing. The frequencies of the earth and the planets are changing. Now, where it's all going to end up, just like them giving us the Jabberwocky, maybe they're setting up because they know that something's going to happen, that it's going to open you up to where you see the lies in front of you. And after that, they can't really take you back to where you was before. Once you see something, you can't unsee it.
I'm gonna play a little bit of this. You said the 11-minute mark?
Yeah, 11-minute
The
mark. Just play
Rosicrucians
it.
teach that all great religions have been given to the people among whom they are found, by divine intelligences who designed each system of worship to suit the needs of the race or nation to whom it was given. A primitive people cannot respond to a lofty and sublime religion, and vice versa. What helps one race would hinder another, and in pursuance of the same policy there has been devised a system of soul unfoldment suited especially to the Western people, who are racially and temperamentally unfit to undergo the discipline of the Eastern school, which was designed for the more backward Hindus. The Rosicrucian Fellowship, for the purpose of promulgating the Rosicrucian teachings in the Western world. The Rosicrucian Fellowship was founded in 1909. It is the herald of the Aquarian Age, when the sun by its processional passage through the constellation Aquarius will bring out all the intellectual and spiritual potencies in man which are symbolized by that sign. As heat from a fire warms all objects within the sphere of its radiations, so also the Aquarian ray will raise the Earth's vibrations to a pitch we are as yet unable to comprehend, though we have demonstrations of the material workings of this force in the inventions which have revolutionized life within the memory of the present generation. We have wondered at the X-ray, which sees through the human body, but each one has a sense latent which when evolved would enable him to see through any number of bodies or to any distance. We marvel at the telephone conversations across the continent of America, but each has within a latent sense of speech and hearing that is far more acute. We are surprised at the exploits of ships under sea and in the sky, but we are all capable of passage under water or through the sky. Nay, more, we may pass unscathed through the solid rock and the raging fire, if we know how, and lightning itself is slow compared to the speed with which we may travel.
Rich, let me ask you this question: the Rosicrucians, are they good guys or bad guys? What are they?
Well, you know, most of when someone tells you that they're evil and to stay away from them, that's the first place I'm running, because usually that's the shit that they always want to use against you, but they don't want you to run to it, because if you go figure it out, then the thing is you figure out what they use against you. I mean, so when they say that the Rosicrucians are, cult-like, I'm going to go figure out what they're about and try to understand what they're talking about. I mean, some of the greatest knowledge and wisdom that we've been given from those people, they were the Rosicrucians. I mean, even the Rose Christ. What they're talking about is, the Catholics had hidden that shit from you because, what, like they prayed to the Mother Mary, so they said. Well, what they was doing is they was explaining that they was going to use the feminine side of their brain to find sinner. They was going to use the rosary, right, to center themselves, so that way they could go into a mantra to open their third eye. That's pretty much what they was saying. Everything is inverted. Let's just, when they tell you, like they're telling you, if you're paying attention to the news, they tell you that the border is secure. Yes, it is. Yes, it is secure, just the way they want it. That's how secure it is. They're securing that they're going to bring in whoever they want to bring in. Now, if you're paying attention to the flooding down there and the people that were fighting against the National Guard to break in, that was all a ruse. That's a ruse. Who cares about innocent people that are wanting to come into the country? We're not paying attention to those. We're looking for the ones that are coming in while they're creating these ruses and flooding the border and causing all the distraction, while they're taking our children across at the other end of the border, and they're bringing in terrorist activity through other means that no one will be even privy to. It's not the ones that want to be caught that you need to pay attention to. It's the ones that don't want to be caught.
I want to get a floor to Artie. Artie, if you want to respond to what Rich is saying, but also, what is your shit hit the fan plan?
Yeah, shit hitting the plan. I mean, part of it is sort of in effect. I was living in Canada until 3 years ago, and sort of could see the reins of socialism tightening under Trudeau's regime. And the other thing is, sort of, I spent nearly 17 years now living outside of the United Kingdom. Nearly 15 of those years I spent living in the United States and in Canada. I was in Southern California prior to Toronto for 4 years. But I lived illegally I had no documentation, living the sort of grey man lifestyle, sort of hiding in plain sight. If you don't have a social security, you don't have a national insurance number, then you don't exist. And for 15 years, I didn't use a bank account, didn't have a debit card, credit card, no rental agreements, no contracts, nothing in my name.
Wow.
That left a footprint, but due to sort of personal situations and the fact that sort of Trudeau's Canada was getting a place that you don't want to be undocumented in anymore, I left and headed to sort of Mexico, and sort of the next stage of the plan is to sort of find me a patch of land somewhere in the middle of nowhere and wall it off and disappear. Which is sort of the stage I'm looking in now, is finding the plot of land. And the sort of beauty about this part of the world is like food is falling from the trees. You know, I've got fucking mangoes and coconuts and bananas all within walking distance, and you know, I have another location that does have a little bit of fruit growing sort of naturally, and you can grow year round here. On top of that, you know, there's things like iguanas and snakes that are in abundance, that also make for good eating in survival situations, as do bugs. In fact, cockroaches and locusts are considered within extreme prepper circles ideal livestock to keep in the sort of shit hit the fan situation, because they breed and multiply very rapidly, and pound for pound they pack as much protein as beef. So that is sort of my shit hitting the fan sort of situation. My knowledge of the sort of Rosicrucians comes sort of from the sort of Knights Templar romances, the Holy Grail, the Moravian or Moravians. I'm not sure how to spell to pronounce it, but the Moravian bloodline is one of the sort of oldest bloodlines known to man. In the sort of legends, that the Moravian bloodline was spawned from the bloodline of Christ, but the Rosicrucians also have some links, as far as I can remember, to the Knights Templar, who many believe were the precursor to the sort of Freemasons. And sort of the Knights Templar, the Rosicrucians used the sort of Red Cross, which is also the banner of the Rothschilds, and the Red Cross and the Rothschilds, the Red Shield, and the Rosicrucians is something I have sort of looked at a little bit in the past. But you know, you sort of talk about the Mother of Mary, and when they're talking about the Mother of Mary, if or not I'm correct in this, the Rosicrucians see the Mother of Mary as being Mary Magdalene and not Mary the Mother. And I mean, this is a Da Vinci Code that was sort of plagiarized the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail, which come out in the sort of late 1980s, I believe, early 90s perhaps. And I think it was a book, and so I'm pretty sure it was a book that was banned for a while in England, along with, there was, you know, the satanic verses by Salman Rushdie. There were a few books that were banned for religious reasons, I guess. But it was a book I sort of managed to get hold of in sort of read, and it was, you know, I guess the Indiana Jones movies that sort of compelled me to sort of research into religious artifacts, that sort of led me to sort of the Holy Grail. But that was a sort of book that introduced me to the sort of Moravian bloodline. Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that. And the sort of Rosicrucians in the sort of blood, the Knights Templar. And the belief is that, you know, that the Templars were the protectors of the Grail, and the Grail wasn't actually a cup of Christ. It sort of translates as Sangrail, bloodline. And, you know, this was sort of a theory that was made very public in the sort of Da Vinci Code, a very, very popular book. And eventually a movie, Tom Hanks, wasn't it? He played the Tom Langdon, the main character in that. But fiction always provides eventual truth or snippets of truth, and sort of the, you know, the Da Vinci Code in the Priory of Sion and all these sort of secret societies that are involved in keeping certain secrets may or may not exist, but there are secret societies with an awful lot of secrets and plans and agendas that will probably be centuries, millennia in the making, and are sort of playing out in real time. And I think, it was the Waco, Texas incident that was my eye-opener, and it was sort of an incident that was televised live. And I sort of tuned in for the 50-something days that siege runs.
Wait, so you got to watch the Waco event live on TV?
Yeah. And obviously that was sort of a horrifying climax to that event. But the 99 is the United States were running an operation under the CIA called Patriot Conspiracy, PATCON for short. And what the government did was bring domesticated terrorism to the shores of the United States that had previously been immune to such things. I grew up in the United Kingdom during the 1970s and the 1980s, but the 70s, we were under constant terrorist threat from the IRA, which were the Al-Qaeda or ISIS of the time. They were Irish terrorists that were bombing England, various cities, and a day didn't go by where the IRA weren't phoning into like London's secret intelligence headquarters with a list of bomb threats in various towns and cities. And that was it. Mostly they were threats, but every now and then there would be a bomb. And I can actually remember as a 7-year-old going to the movies to watch the Watership Down with my mum and dad. And we got evacuated because there was a bomb threat in the movie theater. And another occasion, I was at school and we all got evacuated from school and sent to the local fire station because our school had been threatened with a bomb. And, that was shit that I grew up with as a kid that seems quite normal. But the United States never had terrorism. I believe the events at Ruby Ridge, the events at Waco, Texas, the events of Oklahoma City, which was the precursor to 9/11, and 9/11 were all carried out under Operation Patriot Conspiracy. Timothy McVeigh, who was the alleged bomber of Oklahoma City, was allegedly a military top, achieving personnel. He's a sniper, crack commando, special forces. He was sort of the Rambo of real life, so to speak. But apparently, he got disillusioned with the government and the military, and went very radicalized and supposedly hung around with militias and these types. But other people believe that he was a double agent that was sheep-dipped from the military and given sort of a new persona and a guise of someone who defected in order to infiltrate some of these militias and conspiracy-type organizations that sort of existed in a world before the internet. You had to actually infiltrate physically back then. Now all of this stuff takes place online and it's far easier to infiltrate. But Timothy McVeigh was at Ruby Ridge. Timothy McVeigh was at Waco, Texas, and then lo and behold, he turns up in a U-Haul full of explosives and takes out a federal building in Oklahoma City. Was he acting on his own accordance and independently, or was he a government operative put in place and in position to, in some cases, be the handler or the overseer, or in the case of Oklahoma City, the Lee Harvey Oswald, the patsy, that they needed to take the fall for that. But all of these events were carried out by the United States government on domestic soil and bred into the nation's minds that there was a threat of terrorism that then climaxed with September the 11th, which everybody was in place ready to witness that alleged second plane hit the building. Sorry, I went off on a little ramble there. My apologies.
It's all good. Kelly, what's your shit hit the fan plan? And then we're going to go into emoji witchcraft.
Well, I think the best way to look at it is just basically know that any plan you have, you're probably not going to be able to stick to because, that's why chaos is chaos. And I think the biggest issue people will face, when or if, I mean, to me, it's when there's a collapse is that it'll be people's ability to adapt to the situation that they're in, and their surroundings and the people that they have around them, because you may have a perfect scenario in your head, but most likely whatever happens is going to be probably totally different from that. And it's going to take critical thinking skills, the ability to adapt. And I've always said that people that have been through some type of trauma, or even people that have been in jail, just basically had a hard time, I think are probably going to fare much better than people who have always had it pretty easy. I think we talked about that at one point. So that's what I don't have a specific plan because I feel like that's kind of setting myself up.
I want to tell y'all my plan and my prediction, right? Well, not my plan, but my kind of like my prediction of what's gonna go, and you guys can react to it. I think it's gonna be like a situation where they continue to let these immigrants in, because Rich influenced me to think like this. I think they're gonna keep letting these immigrants in, and they say a lot of these immigrants are from gangs, and they're gonna get as many of them in as possible and prolong it to where they can kind of organize a situation. And I think Trump is gonna come back in. I'm pretty sure they're gonna bring Trump back in, and I think Trump is gonna build that wall. He's build it up enough to where we won't be able to leave. We're going to be trapped in here. And then I think they're going to turn the lights off. And then I think it's going to be like a Royal Rumble type of situation. And we're going to, and that's it. And then the countries outside are going to be like,
Hunger
wow. He said Hunger Games. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
it's
might
funny
be
that
completely wrong. I could be completely wrong.
I want to flip everybody's paradigm for a minute. What do you call chaos? You realize that the nature in which we all depend on is chaos. Man has always tried to give you peace and tell you that we can go live here and we can be peaceful. You ever wonder why it is we're taking in, all these fucking GMOs and shit? It started out as, man had to square him off a plot of land, right? So when he done that, he built him a garden. And from that moment that he built himself a garden, did he not have to rake and hoe and pull weeds? Where before everything was chaotic, everything thrived and grew everywhere. I mean, we all come from a form of natural selection. Only the strong survived. Now we're to the point where we've been programmed to be so fucking weak that if there was a Hunger Games, it just scares the shit out of everybody. And yes, even Hurricane himself said he plays a game where it's the assassins are being fought by the Templars. Well, the assassin creeds, they're the same thing as the Templar. They're basically your ISIS over there. But in America, whenever they do a bombing or anything over here, it's just a petty bombing. It's us. It's the same people. And like Kelly had said, 88. Yeah, you ever notice that if you go look up who makes Assassin's Creed and who makes uh, those video games, it's called the Umbrella Group. If you look at the Umbrella Group, it's the same cross. It's the same red cross. And when you look at it,
Wow.
if you look at it, you will notice that there are 8 points, and you can take and put a 8 sideways and a 8 upright, right? Horizontal and vertical. That is your 88, right? If you take the twin towers, you put an 8 on one side and you put an 8 on the other. One 8 is a female and the other 8 is a male. Now, low key, you sent me a video just the other day where you had oh, you was watching oh, what was his name? He was talking about the Taurus energy field.
Who are you talking about, Rick?
Yeah, you sent me a video the other day you was watching where he's talking about the Taurus energy field and being the cup, the chalice.
Mm.
That's because it is the cup and it is the chalice. It was oh, a black guy. Is the black guy that was showing you the the vortex field.
Hey, real quick, this is Rich T's channel. I just dropped his link in the live chat. Definitely subscribe to his channel. Show him some love. Rich put out a lot of content. He's just not safe for YouTube, as I'm sure RD and all of us are. So definitely show him some love. Go over there and check out his channel. Go ahead, Rich.
Okay, it's bro Sanchez. You sent me the video.
Bro Sanchez, yes.
Okay, now you notice that he was showing you the vortex field, right?
Yes, sir.
Look at that. Yes, sir. It's the vortex field. If you look at it, it's an 8. See, that all that occult knowledge, it goes way deeper. Those who understand it, you know, can go further with it. But the 88, you know what? The atom is the 88, right? All it is everything is energy. We all know that. You know, when it comes to whatever they choose, you know, and everybody's like, well, you know what? God said that he's going to bring peace upon earth. No, he didn't. He said he's going to bring chaos. You should want chaos, not peace, because nothing ever good comes when you spent very much time in a time of peace. You know what? It's kind of like once you've been on welfare for so long, you don't want to get off of it because that free money coming in is a good thing, right? Once you've had food stamps, it's a good thing. You become domesticated. You're like a rabbit in a cage. That's exactly what Hitler, that's what Mao, that's what all of them did. They waited till the next generation come along that lived in peace, and then they tricked them into believing that the last generation didn't know what was going on, and they had what was called a cultural cleansing. See, Mao himself, he did it backwards. He was inverted about it. First, he had the Great Leap Forward. And when that didn't work out, he decided he needed to kill off all the older people. So then he took the younger generation and told them that all the older generation didn't know what the fuck they was doing. And they was basically blocking them from moving forward. So he had a cultural cleansing. If you look around you, that's pretty much what's going on right now. It's the younger generation that thinks that the older generation doesn't know what the hell they're doing. They want to destroy all of the memory of the past. And then your great leap forward is going to be basically AI and all this robotic shit that they're bringing out with. They basically got everybody defund the police, and now they're going to be coming out with robots. You're not driving down the street anywhere without a camera taking a picture of your license plate. It knows where you went and how long you was gone and when you got back home. It knows what you bought.
Mm.
It knows what your cholesterol looks like. There's going to come a day when you're going to go to order a pizza, and then there's going to be a lady on the other side that's automated and said, Mr. Low-Key, you can't have this pizza because you've had 3 of these pizzas in the last week, but your doctor says that your cholesterol is real high. Would you like to opt out for the veggie pizza?
Rich, I'm gonna crash out. I'm gonna crash the fuck out, Rich.
But see, that's all domesticated. It's like, think about it like this. People that can't stay out of trouble go to the penitentiary. But when they're in the penitentiary, they make things real easy for them because they can't handle it out here in society. So they turn the lights off on them. They tell them what time it is that they're going to go to bed. They have their meal placed for them every day and their bedding ready. But they suffer, don't they, in the penitentiary? Because everything is done for them just the way they like it until they get tired of it and they figure out that, you know what? if you really want anything in this world, you better hope it's chaotic out here. People that go to the penitentiary can't handle it out here in the real world, and that is the truth.
I want to give Artie the floor to respond, and then we're gonna go directly into the emoji witchcraft. Shout out Daniel Luna for supporting the channel and sending me this information. This is crazy.
Yeah, goodness, a lot to respond to there. Yeah, I can concur. Like the penitentiary and the incarceration system is a revolving door that once you sort of, the majority of people that go in once, they enjoy it in there. I had the misfortune in my time in California to find myself in Supermax. It pitches the correctional facility in there for a little bit of trouble that I got into that eventually.
Wait. You was at a Supermax prison?
Yeah, I went to Supermax in LA County.
Holy shit, RD. What the hell?
Yeah, well, not to say too much, a bar fight revolved in me sort of being picked up on the side of the road by a patrol car, where they took me to the drunk tank, and on arrival they discovered that I didn't have any documents and is an overstay. They had to contact immigration, and because I had an immigration stamp on me, I was unable to plea bargain my way out of going to jail. And some of the charges that I had against me were violent crimes, a level 7 category crime, which warranted me maximum security. So I went to Supermax in LA County, which was my Vietnam. If ever you want a fucking traumatic experience, that was it. And especially sort of being a foreigner, because even the sort of whites didn't want to roll with me because I was illegal. And I'm like, you ain't no different to no beaner. You don't belong with us. Go roll with the beaners. So it was very scary in that sense. But what was more scary is when I sort of got released from Supermax, they handed me over to immigration. Luckily, a lot of my charges got dropped, and I ended up sort of pleading guilty to a minor drunken disorder, public intoxication charge, drunken disorderly as it'd be called in England, which is something you get.
He was living that life, Rich.
Would you say, RD,
living that life?
Anytime that they're offering you peace, that's the last thing that you should work off of. That you'd be better off to hope for chaos, because as peaceful as as they make everything out for you, they give you a bed, they give you a cot, but those people in there, they're still suffering. They don't know what it is that they're suffering. But out here in the real world where you work and you know what, you dig your hole like a rabbit and you make your place to lay, and there's a sense of accomplishment, people thrive better under those circumstances, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, people, I spoke to people on the inside that were, I find it a lot easier in here. And actually, some of the ways I spent my days locked up was thinking of jobs that I had on the outside that were worse than being locked up. And I sort of think to myself, really and truly, when you get punished for murdering something, your crime is you get to jerk off all day long and lift weights. It's not like you're smashing rocks or doing anything. And that is what majority of inmates do. The most traumatic thing that I heard was the sound of multiple people jerking off. That's the sound you don't want to experience firsthand, I can tell you that much. But the worst part of it was when you get to immigration prison, because of the sort of guidelines of people that were being deported at that time, meant that it was only the unscrupulous members of the illegal population that were being deported. So this is like cartel members, drug dealers, rapists, and murderers. So people on misdemeanors were given first and second chances and like released to the streets. but there's no segregation in an immigration prison. And I saw some very horrible things, more horrible things while I was in an immigration prison than I did in a maximum security prison. But eventually they sort of deported me and sent me back to England temporarily, where I sort of packed my bags and went to Canada with this sort of intention of trying to cross the border and get back to the United States in Southern California. I ended up getting stuck in Toronto for sort of 10 years. But yeah, the sort of prison system is something, and so strangely enough, in sort of my time living in Toronto, especially in the winter when I'm getting up in -40, having to go 2 hours on the subway to a shitty job that I'm going to get $10 an hour for, I thought, fuck me, life would be so much easier in prison. I wouldn't have to get up, go anywhere. I get my meals for free. I get my bed for free. I get a couple of hours of free cable a night, all the hot water I can use. It's not a bad life if you can adapt to being incarcerated. But sort of other stuff that Rich mentioned, sort of regarding the sort of two towers in '88. I mean, Heil Hitler, HH, that's another 88 in Gematria. And you mentioned sort of cultural cleansing. Well, cultural cleansing is what I'm suggesting is going on with these migrants, that these are the people that are being culturally cleansed. Maybe some of them are going to be useful. I know 2016, FEMA were active south of the border, conducting exercises with international military personnel, training them in domestic deployment scenarios. And the reason they were kind of conducting these exercises was, should martial law come to be in the United States, maybe United States troops would be a bit reluctant to pull triggers, whereas mercenaries and private contractors would probably have no problem doing so. So FEMA being involved with that, and FEMA being involved with the migrants once they get to the border, and Homeland Security have dealt with them, is of a concern for me. And I'm sure there will be multi-purposes for these migrants. Some might become splinter cell agents, some might end up Soylent Green, some might become experimentations, some might end up in camps. We don't know. But the interesting stuff you were mentioning about two towers in sort of 9/11 is something I do have an obsessive aggressive hard on for. And
one side of the tower was male, and the other side.
Yeah, and the North Tower represented the male, and that was the tower that had the antenna, and the antenna represented the phallic object, and the South Tower represented the female. Now, this is the construct of Solomon's Temple, and the World Trade Center complex was a modern shrine to Solomon's Temple. The 7 buildings represented the 7 towers, with the 2 towers representing the north through the male, and to the south the female. And they also represented a tuning fork. If you looked at the 2 towers and you turn a tuning fork upside down, then it would look very similar to the former World Trade Center site. Now, some of my research into World Trade Center disaster on 9/11 has sort of led me to avenues that not many people would possibly explore to. One of which was the 2 towers TT time travel. Was this a Philadelphia experiment? If you don't know what the Philadelphia experiment was, supposedly the United States government teleported the US battleship through time into another dimension, and when it returned, there were crew members that had merged and blended into the actual physical construction of the battleship. And that, as I said, was the Philadelphia experiment that then sort of got handed over to Camp Hero with Montauk, the Montauk project, that then kind of continued with experimentation on interdimensional portal openings. This is sort of the root source for the series Stranger Things. But my research showed that the Camp Hero location sat on a ley line that runs right through Manhattan and right through the former World Trade Center site. And I suspect because the World Trade Center wasn't just 7 buildings on the surface, it had 7 sub-levels to the World Trade Center. And the 7th level, by all accounts, was authorized personnel only for your eyes, you know, only to certain people. So what on earth could have been going on there? And the fact that they sort of shared the ley line with this government facility that was sort of meddling in these sort of time travel events sort of led me to think, as an alternative avenue of possibility, that did we witness a time travel, event on 9/11? And the other thing that was very interesting that also sort of compelled me into this theory was on the 10th of September, there was a huge thunderstorm and the towers were struck multiple times by lightning. And if Back to the Future taught me anything, it taught me that a lightning bolt can generate 1.21 gigawatts of energy, which is an awful lot of energy to be letting go to waste. And I truly believe that the reason so many of these mega cities have skyscrapers is they act as an energy receiver, and they take a lot of this energy from the lightning and sort of store it in secret facilities underground, repurpose it, and maybe charge us for it as electricity. But I have a theory there. But back to sort of this whole Solomon's Temple sort of theory, the other line of research that I went down sounds absolutely bizarre and ridiculous, but the 1984 movie Ghostbusters, I believe, tells us what could have exactly happened on 9/11. And if anyone can remember the plot of Ghostbusters, the final events of that movie took place within a skyscraper that exploded, leaving a big, huge gash in the side of the building. And the building had been purposely constructed as a conductor and a communicator to other realms and other dimensions. And furthermore, within the plot of Ghostbusters, they mentioned that the architect of the building in the movie was the member of a secret society and a cult that was commissioned to build this building purposely to communicate with other dimensions and other realms. And it also mentions that, in the end of the movie, Gozer comes into play, and Gozer was a Sumerian demigod that brings a Stay Puft Marshmallow to life, who is the destructor. When I looked and started researching Sumerian demigods, I come across 2 Sumerian demigods that are male and female, that are husband and wife. One is called Ninel, and the other one is called Elnil. And it's not much of a push to sort of work 9/11 into their names. Ninel is the first 3 letters of 9 and the first 3 letters of 11 pushed together. And these 2 Sumerian deities, the male is the aggressor. No, actually, the male is the pacifist and the female is the aggressor. That if you bring in these 2 demons or gods into your realm, that you will usher in a period of war and chaos. And the more research I did in relation to Ghostbusters and 9/11, the more information I found, including the guy who developed, who constructed buildings 1, 2, and building 7, which was incidentally also known as the Solomon Building. Coincidence? Or was that by accident? But this individual who constructed it was the name Emery Roth. If or not he dropped the child from his name, I do not know. But Emery Roth was a Freemason who was put in charge of creating the first Freemason hotel in New York on request of the Freemasons. Say request, I mean demands. And he built the first Masonic temple in New York City that contained a scale version of Solomon's Temple. And Emery Roth then went on to this, he actually died, but his company was continued by his sons, where he constructed Towers 1, Towers 2, and Building 7. And a lot of his constructions that he built in architecture were twin-towered buildings, for whatever purpose that is. But I do have a Ghostbusters decode. It sounds bizarre, but there's a lot of stuff there that surprisingly works. Not to say that is what happens, but we cannot rule out anything. And something I like to do is explore all avenues of alternative possibility until I arrive at the probable conclusion. And as for 9/11, I'm still looking for answers. My sort of best theory is it was a Project Bluebeam event, a dummy run, a beta test. But I've done further research that have made me sort of question a little bit of what we did see that day, because we witnessed something that we never, ever saw before. And we're due another event not too far away that is going to probably shadow the events of that day on a grander scale. And although like 9/11 primarily affected the United States, it was a global event in the sense that everybody tuned in and paid attention to what was going on in New York City that day. Everyone experienced the same narrative, the same messages that the mainstream pushed out. And it was a mind control experiment, as much as, you know, psychological operations are that, exactly, to control the minds and the thoughts and the behaviors, and mainly to observe the reactions of the people that witness these psychological operations so that they can implement the solutions to them. And with this cultural cleansing in the migrant problems, that just last week, the mayor of New York City pleaded with the federal government for a solution to the migrant situation in that sanctuary city, because he said it is unsustainable. Sustainable development goals, and sustainability is a word they're using a lot in conjunction with these migrants. But he called for a decompression strategy to assist with the migrant problems, and he's asking for the government to provide a solution. We all know the solutions are already pre-written, ready to go once the desired reaction is achieved. Now, a few weeks ago, when I sort of first mentioned that my theory is that this migrant situation is extermination, not invasion, I suggested that sooner or later it's going to get to a point within these sanctuary cities that are the new ghettos, that somebody is going to ask for a solution to the problem that they are becoming. And my theory would be that that solution would be the final one. And it's sort of funny that New York City is the center of this sort of migrant situation. I know there's lots of stuff going on in the border, but migrants are being shipped to New York, Chicago, other sanctuary cities. But what I'm sort of getting at is, like September 2001, we have FEMA acting in New York, which has got a sort of emergency situation, this time not with collapsing buildings, as they told us, but with migrants. And FEMA have already carried out drills. They've already put into place PDFs, protocols for the camps. They had a super shelter system in design 15 years ago that they patented and put out a PDF on. All of this is coming to fruition and is happening in cultural cleansing, chaos, order out of chaos. We need a global unifying event to usher in the new world order. Could that event come in the shape and size of an asteroid, a tsunami, a UFO invasion, or an unnatural disaster? The sad truth of it is the government of the United States of America has patented technology that can deceive all of us into believing we're witnessing religious events, UFO, holographic invasion. They have the ability to control and manipulate and make weapon weather. They can direct the weather just like they directed projected Hurricane Erin off of course. It was due to hit Manhattan on the Tuesday morning of September 11th, 2001, but miraculously diverted off course into the Atlantic and didn't cause any problems whatsoever. So Katrina, Sandy, that was an event that sort of did a lot of chaos and destruction in Texas. Texas has taken quite a pounding and seems to be sort of an epicenter of some of these unnatural disasters to take care of. And New York seems to be a sort of destination for more urban, like city disasters that the sort of world can pay attention to. And I think, you know,
behind what they're doing. Like I said, there's plenty of land out in Arizona and New Mexico that they could have set those tents up in, but they didn't. They took them into the cities, and now it's to the point there's so much crime and shit that they're shutting down the Walmarts, they're shutting down all the box chain stores, and they're going to leave the cities deserted. And what they're going to do is they're going to start spreading out. They know that this is happening. That's why they're doing it, because they know that there's going to be spread. And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned the Walmart closures because, you know, Walmart is a partner to Homeland Security, and it became a partner to Homeland Security post 9/11. And FEMA camps, they're also partnered with FEMA in the sense that they can offer their locations to FEMA in the event of an emergency, because pretty much every city has a Walmart, and the Walmart has everything you need in an emergency. It has medicine, food, clothing. It can be used, you know, the car park can be used as a triage center. And we've all heard the stories of FEMA Walmart camps in Walmart martial law. Sam Walden, the individual that created Walmart previously to his retailing entrepreneurship, he worked for the government during World War II, overseeing the internment camps. And I don't know if any of you folks watching or any of you guys in the panel have seen the videos of the FEMA coffins and the big pre-dug grave sites. What were they preparing for? Why do they need so many coffins? Why do they need so many open graves? You know, one of the logistically bottlenecks in Nazi Germany with the concentration camps was disposal of the bodies. The showers were very, very efficient and quick and hygienic, but it was getting rid of the bodies. You know, you can only bodies only burn so quickly, and you can only dig so many holes. Although I was born in the United Kingdom, my grandparents were refugees. They were Polish refugees that were rescued from the camps by Americans and brought to the United Kingdom after the World War, and lived in a refugee camp for the first few years of my father's life before they were sort of allowed to leave and go and live among society. And one of our Christmas rituals was very disturbing. It's a little bit like Seinfeld in the Festivus, the airing of grievances. But before we got to enjoy our Christmas dinner and open our presents, me and my cousins all had to sit down and listen to the death camp horror stories, so that we'd be that much more grateful for our Christmas gifts. And
Kelly said something interesting. Hop up in here, Kelly. We haven't heard from you from a
yeah,
while.
sorry, Kelly.
Kelly said, when I Googled FEMA Bible verse together, one of the first results was FEMA concentration camps. What?
Yeah, I just thought that was interesting because I don't know. I just sometimes I like to put certain terms together and then look up Bible verse and see what comes up. And not necessarily would they have FEMA in the Bible, but you have to wonder why do those two things pull up concentration camps? But another thing I was thinking about was how people keep talking about, like, you have to get out of the city, and you guys were talking about that too, about how it's concentrated and then it spreads out. My mom and dad live in Georgia, in a relatively rural area, I would say, and there's a bunch of marked off space for the United States Corps of Engineers. And I mean, obviously I have a mind a little bit different than my mom and dad think, but when I saw that near their property, I'm thinking, I mean, that's potentially a setup for whoever needs to prop up a camp there, that they can legally do it. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Besides the Walmarts and stuff like that.
That's yeah. They've always talked about Walmart's becoming FEMA camps, but and just like most FedEx facilities now, that if you go into them, that they're all fenced off and they've all got these electric fences, but they're not an electric fence on the outside like they're trying to keep the outside from getting in it. They're on the inside. And like I told my wife, I was like, look, if you're working for Walmart and you're making decent or FedEx and you're making decent money, why in the world would you need an electric fence on the inside? And she got to the point where she was like, well, because people might steal packages and throw them over the fence. And it's like, if you're working there, you wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah.
You'd be trying to get into the FedEx facility, not out of it. But along with that, a lot of facilities and a lot of up and down highways, I don't know if you've noticed this, but they put the solar panels up, cameras. That's called flock. And I think that they're just getting to the point where what they're doing is just like in the Bible, they had the watchers. They just want to watch you. You know what I mean? They already know psychologically by Facebook and everything else what kind of person you're going to be. And yes, they're right whenever they say that, you get to the point in Christianity, let's just say if there was an EMP or something like that, there's going to be a lot of Christian groups that are they're going to turn against the basic people. They're going to turn into cults. You know that as well as I do. And they're going to be the ones that are going up down the road, and they're going to crucify who they want. And you know what? If it ever got to the point of Soylent Green, they're going to be the ones that are going to be eating people. And just like in the book of Eli, those cults knew that they could use that Bible to get people to do their bidding. And that's just the way it is. So, I'm kind of up in the air on the whole FEMA camp, of whether or not they just decided to use FEMA camps anymore, or if they're not going to be, certain stations. But I mean, the United States with all these fucking cameras and stuff, it's one big large FEMA camp.
True.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's all segregated. There's what is it, 8 or 10 FEMA zones in the United States?
But
funny you mentioned. Sorry to interrupt, but funny you mentioned Soylent Green. I refer to Soylent Green as my 1984. It's sort of more 1984 than 1984, and we can't ignore the whole plant-based vegan agenda. But that's a topic for another day, I'm sure. But I just wanted to point out Soylent Green. Like minds flock together, so they say.
We're at the point where they got so much technology and AI and quantum computing that, I mean, I've read enough survival movies at the end, and you know what? I got to the point where I think it's just better that you just live out your life. Things are coming, but to stack and to try to pack up things and be stationary in one place, you'll live a life fearing life than just going out and living. And like, that's why I always said, just pack heat and be happy. The only thing that you can really control is what's going on around you. And in some ways, that might be a form of mind control by letting things get to you to the point that you spend your life, trying to hoard up so much stuff, hoping that something comes. I'd hate to live my life and get to the end of it and realize that the only thing I did is try to chase fear. You get what I'm saying? And that could be a form of their mind control as well. Just like when you as a child, let's just take you as a child. You know what? When you started growing up, your mom and dad said in order to be happy, you have to get you a car, or society did. You got to get a car, then you got to get a girl, then you got to have a baby, then you got to have a picket fence, and until you get to these through all these points, and you go through school and you get a job and be a productive slave like everybody else, you're not going to be happy. So you run through your whole life chasing this whole idea of what they told you that happy is. But that's not what happy is. Because when you was a child and you owned nothing and you was out having fun with your friends playing in mud puddles and shit, you didn't need anything to be happy. Happiness is what you already have. But what they've given you is the idea that you're not happy and you have to run after happy. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. The mind control effect. We've all been mind controlled one way or another, and I think within this sort of field or community of conspiracy types, many of us sort of, that would never work on us. And it's very interesting. You sort of say, we're in a sort of perpetual state of fear. What are the fucking Illuminati going to do next? What have they got up their sleeve for the next psychological operation? When folks like us, this is our programming, to go and research stuff, find stuff out, and then talk about it. And, maybe we have small audiences, but there is an artificial intelligence algorithm that is listening, is paying attention, and saying in everything we talk about to the sentient world simulation. And I just sort of had a memory, I had a memory block earlier that has just come back to me with regards to the assassins, and some of the comments that Hurricane Jane's making about the Assassin's Creed and Resident Evil. Now, the word assassin comes from hashashin, which is from the word hashish, and the Hashashin cult or dynasty was for about 5th century, I believe, is the origins of the Illuminati. And most of us sort of think of the Illuminati in modern terms as the Bavarian Illuminati. It was formed in the 1700s, but the Bavarian Illuminati sort of rebranded and rebooted the Hashashins one world sort of agenda, which was what they were sort of attempting to do, and this was sort of Alexander the Great era, and tried to replicate it and say they're trying to replicate it. They are replicating it and sort of doing a more successful sort of job in it. And if you look at the letter in the prophecy of Albert Pike, sort of almost everything is coming to fruition. He said the sort of final war would be against Islam, and Palestine, Gaza, all this kind of turmoil going on over there. The talks of red heifers being born and temples being built on sacred mountains.
But they always
it's getting very prophetic. Times are becoming very prophetic. Let's say that much.
But they always give you that stuff. Like let's just take the point is when you think of the Illuminati, you think of somebody that's higher than you, that has power over you, and it's something that you're supposed to fear. So it works well. I mean, most people don't even know their own strength because they're too busy on the bottom side thinking they're weak and these people have power over them. But that's exactly how they get their power. It's by people giving up their power. It's all
Yeah.
it's like thinking that you're going to vote for a fucking president and that's automatically things are going to get good and they're going to go your way. The only way in life that anything is ever going to get good and go your way is if you find your own inner strength and make your life what you want it to be.
Yeah, if you can do that within your best capability, that really is, and sort of detaching from the system and not paying attention to some of these things, you do have a lot. Life can be a little bit happier. Let's say that much.
And that's a witchcraft that I'm telling you, and that's basically what that is. That is a form of witchcraft. It's a form of changing your perception and stop giving power to others. It's the pillars of and Boaz. See,
Exactly. I mean, this is
the
sort of
the law of
sorry.
polarity.
But this is how the sort of cult is formed. The cultists give the ultimate power to the cult leader, and the cult leader can then rule over his minions accordingly. And I don't know if or not you want to use that as a segue to get into YouTube cults. So I know you had that lined up to speak about this evening, or not. Take it as an opportunity to do so.
Let me hop in real. Let me hop in here real quick. We got a special guest that's going to join the panel. Rich, we were having a conversation about, you were basically saying, do we have, I think it was along the lines of like influence. You were saying, do I have the influence? And I have a very small channel. The algorithm is constantly working against us. And the individual I'm about to bring on, even though they have thousands of people, this individual has thousands of people that pay attention to their content, subscribe to their Patreon, and they show them a lot of love and appreciation because of the hard work that they put in. This is an individual that has a lot of eyes on him. So Rich, I'm just letting you know right now, the individual we about to have up. I definitely want to welcome Zach Hubbard. I don't know how many goddamn channels he's gone through. But I'm going to post this link in the chat for people that's not familiar. But everybody's entitled to their opinion. But let's have a respectful conversation. I trust no one to be disrespectful to Zach, and I already know Zach's not going to disrespect anybody. I appreciate Zach because he held an event. He had a meetup in New York, and I came there personally, and that it was just a beautiful thing to see. It's one thing, I read this quote. It says, the purpose of knowledge is action, not knowledge. So he held this event in New York, and all of these quote unquote truth seekers came out, and it was a beautiful thing to see in real time. I'm sorry. So that's something every time I talk about, Zach Hubbard, I cannot mention that he did something that I want to do. So I want to bring Zach in here. Zach, I appreciate you coming through, even paying attention to my small channel, my small platform. Definitely subscribe to Gematria Effect News. Zach, we really were having a conversation of one, what was your shit hit the fan plan? And then if you wanted to piggyback on the topics that were on the table. But I'm curious to know, what's your shit hit the fan plan?
Well, again, you got to be like water depending on the situation. But I always tell people to be prepared. An ounce of preparation is worth a pound of cure. And again, the powers that shouldn't be, they've been telling us for some time what the next 9/11 will be. Janet Napolitano, when she left office in 2013, she said the next 9/11 is not if, but when, and it'll be a cyber attack taking down the national power grid. And of course, at the end of last year, that really got on a lot of people's radar when Obama produced that movie, Leave the World Behind, which ends with the billionaire bunker and the name Comet on the wall. And for your panel, if they're not familiar with my work, what I got into I was trying to figure it out from the time 9/11 happened, but I figured it out in 2013, what I was looking for. I was trying to understand more about the ritualism that I saw ongoing with our government and the media and numbers. And I don't know if you meant to make the screen so big. I don't see anybody else.
I wanted to give you the spotlight, Zach.
Oh, I appreciate that. I was like, where'd everybody else go? But
we're kind of sitting with a legend here, ain't we?
Zach, the people gravitate to Zach, and he's just, we all can't be the face of this. Some people some people just gravitate towards people.
I think I'll listen to your channel.
Yeah, listen, man. Go ahead, Zach.
So for people who aren't familiar with my work, what I learned about it was from this book right here is where I finally found what I was looking for. Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Yeah. He has a short segment in that book about this code of letters and numbers that may or may not exist behind the English language, and he challenges the reader to look into it. And so I took that challenge, and right away I realized something was going on. And just to make a quick point, the title of that new Obama film, Leave the World Behind. If you turn every letter into a number using the alphabetic order, so L's the 12th letter of the alphabetic order, E's the 5th, A's the 1st. If you spell out that title, Leave the World Behind, it equates to 192. Well, why is that interesting? Again, the name Cometus is on the billionaire bunker at the end of the film. Cometus died in the year 192 AD, and his death is around the time of the fall of the Roman Empire. So anyhow, this code of letters and numbers is what I've been studying since 2013 when I discovered this book. And that book was published in 1926. So the knowledge has been out there. But again, just when I checked in, you guys have been talking about Waco and Oklahoma City and 9/11 and the Templars and the Rosicrucians and the Illuminati. And the one group I haven't heard mentioned is it fits right in there. That's the Jesuits.
The Jesuits. Let's
And
go, Zach.
The Jesuits have the Templar cross in their logo. They're essentially the modern day Templars of the Catholic Church. Of course, they also run a large network of private schools where they recruit the likes of the Donald Trumps and the Joe Bidens and the Gavin Newsoms and the Anthony Faucis and the Cuomos of the world, from the Klaus Schwabs.
Yeah.
But
Hey, just a second, Zach. Have you ever noticed that the Star of David, a lot of people put their representation of the Star of David with the Twin Towers. But if you break down the Star of David alone, it's a male and female. It's the blade and the chalice, the blade at the top, the chalice at the bottom, and then 88.
I'm gonna have to study that more.
Yeah,
For the record, though, Star of David does have a gematria value of 119, a lot like how the rest of the world writes the date 11/9 for the 11th of September. To make a point, though, I wanted to go. So, Loki just mentioned how we had the meetup in New York City. Prior to that, we had a meetup in Oklahoma City, and it is a lot better to do in New York because people are actually out and about in New York. Oklahoma City is a ghost town, but a lot of people overlook why April 19th is such a tragic date, and it goes well beyond Oklahoma City and Waco. A lot of people might miss that the American Revolutionary War began in history on April 19th. In 2020, you had the mass shootings all over Canada on April 19th that got a lot of their gun rights taken away. What April 19th is in history is it's the day that Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, became the first recognized superior general, and that recognition came from the Roman Catholic Church and the Pope. But April 19th is very important to Ignatius of Loyola. And just to make a point about Timothy McVeigh, the former CIA agent who's accused of blowing up the Oklahoma City bombing and, with a bunch of fertilizer in the back of a moving truck that caused a tremor that was felt over 10 miles away, which again tells you that it was more than what
couldn't
the
happen.
government let on about. Here's what's amazing about gematria when you learn this. So this little code of ABC 1, 2, 3, all of these things equate to 201. And before I even give the list, understand we're living right now in the time of the first Jesuit Pope, Pope Francis. He's the first publicly Jesuit Pope. He's the first to live in Suite 201 at the Vatican. And if you look into the Jesuit history, they were preserved in the time of their suppression by Catherine the Great, who preserved the order with 201 Jesuit priests. And funny enough, the Jesuits are from France, and the last French Pope was the 201st. But anyhow, in gematria, if you write out Ignatius of Loyola, it equals 201. If you write out Jorge Mario Bergoglio, it equals 201. That's Pope Francis's birth name. If you write out the Jesuit order, it equates to 201. And if you write out Timothy McVeigh, what do you think it equates to? 201. Of course it does. And Terry Lynn Nichols equals 201. And if you look into it, they were radicalized in Arkansas at the white supremacist camp. And the way the leader of that camp's name is always written is with his middle initial, Richard G. Millar, which equals 201. Or hold on. I'm going off the top of my head. It might be Robert G. Millar, but they always put his middle initial in there. Whatever his actual name is 201. And then there was a gentleman put to death the day of the Oklahoma City bombing, the exact same day that the bombing happened. He was executed by the state. His name was Richard Snell, which is also 201. And he tried to blow up the Oklahoma City building in 83, which is interesting because Oklahoma City is on the 83rd meridian. But all of these people's names are 201. They're all connected to that date. And again, 201 is this number of the Jesuits. Well, funny enough, the president at that time, of course, was Bill Clinton from Arkansas, where they supposedly all got radicalized. And he was Jesuit educated at Georgetown. And then who else went to Georgetown was the governor of Oklahoma, Governor Keating. Him and Clinton both went to Georgetown. And the other person who's relevant to that story is actually Joe Biden, because Joe Biden passed, it was his legislation, but it passed on Keating's birthday that year, the first ever legislation ever passed by our Congress for counterterrorism. And that phrase equals 201. And from the day that legislation passed, which was February 10th, until April 19th, was 68 days later. And this is interesting because the word terror equates to 68. And in 1968, again, of course, they would execute McVeigh 3 months to the day of 9/11 happening, June 11, 2001. 1968 was the year McVeigh was born. That was also the year 911 was made the national emergency dialing code. It was also the year World Trade Center construction began in New York. It was the same year George W. Bush graduated from Yale and Skull and Bones. And Skull and Bones gets their symbolism from how the Templars bury their dead in an ossuary. And of course, Skull and Bones is also modeled after the Bavarian Illuminati, which was founded by the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt, who retitled the Order of Illuminati, which equals 201 as well. And then he died 201 days after the anniversary of its establishment. And again, all these secret societies are largely based in Kabbalah, which is technically Jewish mysticism, and the phrase Jewish mysticism is 201. But coming back to 1968, again, 911 made the emergency dialing code by AT&T. World Trade Center construction began in New York City. George W. Bush out of Yale, Skull and Bones. The film 2001: A Space Odyssey came out. Planet of the Apes came out, where the protagonist finds out in the end of the film he's in a destroyed New York. The New York Jets had their only Super Bowl winning season, and that ties in with the Patriots becoming the darlings of the NFL after 9/11 and the Patriot Act. But so many things in 1968 went down, including coronavirus being coined, fentanyl being approved, the assassinations of MLK and RFK. And a lot of people missed the joke of MLK's assassination. MLK was killed on the 95th day of 1968, which was a leap year, and he was named Martin Luther after the Protestant Reformation leader who wrote the 95 Theses. So think about MLK, Martin Luther King, being assassinated on the 95th day of the year. And what's amazing is if you go back in history, from Martin Luther penning the 95 Theses to the Jesuits being formed was exactly 201 months later. And from MLK being assassinated to the nation's first major gun control legislation was exactly 201 days later. And they actually just, I could go on and on.
Zach, let me ask you this question. Let me ask Zach this question, because I know he doesn't have much time. My question to you is, what keeps you going? You know, with it's an uphill battle. You've been doing this for a long time. A lot of people know you as the, respectfully, the gematria guy, when the numbers expert. What keeps you going? Do you feel like we have the ability to win this war, or what keeps Zach Hubbard going?
Well, I think we can win the war. I guess what keeps me going is, what else are you going to do? It's either surrender or fight back. Because the way I see it, we are involved in a war on all kinds of levels. It's a spiritual war. It's a war of information. It's a war of good versus evil. And if you just give up, you've essentially lost. And yeah, I've been driven nuts about this since the time I was 18 years old when 9/11 happened. And just to make the point about 9/11, again, the Twin Towers crumbled and became 0 towers, and then they were re-erected as one World Trade Center. That's a 201 right in front of your face. And
dude, it's crazy that you say that, because in the One World Tower, they have I don't know, it's like a statue or something, and it's a 0 and a 1. I don't know if you've ever...
Georgetown's motto is both into one. If you didn't know that, the first Jesuit university in the nation, that's the school's motto, both into one. And
So is that what they're trying? Is that what the whole 201 is to represent? Two becoming one, or is it what is this? What is this more spiritual aspect of 201? There's got to be a point why they'd want to use that number so much. You get my point?
Sure. So I don't have all the answers, but here's what I can tell you: the phrase "the Holy Bible equals 201," and again, Jewish mysticism is 201. So here's why I think they use 201. Like I told you before, Order of Illuminati equals 201, like the Jesuit order. And again, the Illuminati was founded by the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt. In Hebrew, in the original code of letters and numbers is from the Hebrew alphabet. In Hebrew, the word light has a value of 201, and so does the word enlighten. Both of those things both have 201. Funny enough, in English, the phrase knowledge is power also equates to 201, like how knowledge is light to the occult.
Yeah.
So,
if I could just intervene for a second, funny enough, talking about 9/11, New York actually had another 9/11, and I'm not sure if it was in 1968 or 1966. But it was a big blackout event. It took place on November the 9th, which would be 11/9. Reverse it, it's 9/11, which I guess would have the same 201 value, right? But this was sort of an electrical failure that supposedly a circuit breaker tripped out a very small piece of technology that took out a multi-million-dollar power grid on the entire eastern seaboard and plunged sort of that part of the world, or that part of North America, into sort of chaos for a few days until they could get the power up and running. And it also included a plane, a Swedish airline flight 911 that was due to land at JFK or Newark, one of the New York airports. At the moment, the lights went out and had to be redirected. You sort of have an event taking place on, the 9th of November, 11/9. You've got a plane 9/11 that wasn't able to land in New York. And, a few years later, this event sort of replicated itself on a date with a similar numeral value. I'm not a sort of expert like you are on this sort of gematria, but I do understand the importance of numerology. And who was it that said sort of symbols and numbers don't lie? Another little system I've sort of found that I've used over the sort of years is an anagram generator that's sometimes sort of, in the modern times, popular hashtags or messages that you hear repeated over and over again, particularly on sort of mainstream media, that sometimes if you take that message and put it into an anagram generator, it will give you a coded message. And one of the examples I found extremely disturbing was at the sort of dawn of the pandemic. That I was watching like the sort of local news with one eye and sort of scanning the internet with the other. But on the local news, there was sort of, I'm pretty sure this was a sort of global sort of narrative delivered, but I was in Canada at the time, and the Canadian news agencies, every single one had a reporter outside of a supermarket or a grocery store, and people are lining up and people seem to be purchasing hand sanitizer, toilet paper and soap. And they kept saying that hand sanitizer, toilet paper and soap over and over and over and over and over again. And I run it through an anagram generator, and it brought up pretend hospitalizations, and the second finding was planned hospitalizations, which I found extremely disturbing, considering the period that we were, it was only about 3 or 4 weeks into the lockdowns. They were telling us that it was going to be a deadly disease. And sort of that was one of the more disturbing sort of discoveries that I found using an anagram generator. And sometimes, they have to tell us one way or another what they're going to do, and they find various ways of hiding it, be it with symbology, numerology, using anagrams, or the other way is to use fiction. And the Simpsons, what don't they fucking predict, is one example of sort of predictive programming. But the other reason I mentioned the blackout in New York. It took place on on the 9th of November. They said that the next 9/11 would be an EMP taken out east, the power grid. There'd be no energy, no lights, that sort of, grid down situation. That potentially this solar eclipse could provide the platform to stage a grid down event by saying, oh, the eclipse caused some sort of solar flare that we weren't exactly prepared for, that somehow took down a very, very tiny circuit that controlled the entire, Eastern Bloc power grid, and thrust an awful lot of people in, a lot of people in Texas, in, Ohio, and around the United States in the last 12 months have been displaced for a series of unnatural disasters, be it a train derailment, a chemical plant blowing up, hurricanes or lightning, or God knows what the case was in places like Maui that, obviously looks a little bit like directed energy, if you were to guess. But there's been an awful lot of displacement, a lot of people that are already out of their homes and sort of a little bit living in survival mode, that might then witness another disaster event that would almost cripple a semi-crippled state, if you know what I mean. Sorry if I went off track from your thing there, but the numbers don't lie. And the next 9/11, what's the date of the eclipse? Is it the 8th of April?
8th.
Yeah.
April 8th, which would be 8/8, right? Which is HH.
Kelly, did you want to chime in, Kelly?
I'm trying to think. There's nothing really that I can think to add right now. I'm just listening. Very interesting.
I can add on to what he's saying about weather control. So coming back to the Jesuits, again, if you look into the first admitted act of weather warfare, it's from August 15th, 1952. It's the Lynmouth flood, which was eventually admitted to by the Royal Air Force in the UK. And August 15th is the Jesuit order's birthday. A lot of people's favorite guy, Bill Gates, his full name, William Henry Gates, equates to 201, and he's now divorced from Melinda French Gates, but her birthday is also August 15th, and she comes from a family of Jesuit priests, and again, her middle name's French, like how the Jesuits are from France. Of course, Event 201 was the recent pandemic simulation, which Bill Gates was the co-sponsor of, and that supposed lab leak theory goes to the lab in Wuhan that was built by the French. But coming back to weather control, if you look into history, JFK gave a speech on weather control September 25th, 1961, and he was talking about how with emerging technology and the benefits of this emerging technology of weather control, and how it could, prevent drought in the future, and it could be good for farmers. And this is, around the time of Vietnam, and then the U.S. government admitted after Vietnam that we did Operation Popeye to flood out the Vietnamese troops who were dependent on, the ground and their underground network of tunnels, and we were trying to flood those things out with extra rainfall. And recently in China, you had China admit that they had to use weather modification to bring in more snow for the Winter Olympics, and those were, international headlines, and nobody seemed to blink an eye. But the point is that weather control is it's been around for a while, and the question is, how sophisticated can it be? You might recall the 2 years ago, Wyoming, where Yellowstone is. They said they had a once in 1,000-year rain event. Do you recall this? And it did a good amount of damage to the park?
Yes, I do.
Okay. That was the day leaving 201 days left in the year. That was June 13th. And the strange thing about it is Bill Gates chose Wyoming for his... Do you know that Bill Gates is working on an experimental nuclear reactor right now?
No.
Yeah, if you look into it, Bill Gates he's financing this experimental nuclear reactor, and he says that this for people who are not aware of this, go back and listen to Bill Gates' 2010 TED Talk titled "Innovating to Zero." It's mind-blowing if you listen to it. Looking at it now, he lays out how we can get to zero carbon emissions, and he shows us formula, and he says we got to go to zero in one of these categories, and then one of the categories is people. And then he jokes about, well, was he really joking? He talks about the way we can reduce the human population. Have you guys seen this before? The number.
Yes,
I don't want
I'm
to say it on
very
your channel
familiar
because they'll
with.
take down your video for it. You cannot quote exactly what Bill Gates said in the 2010 TED Talk, but here, I'll put it this way. His number one way to reduce population, the clue is his foundation in Seattle is directly across the street from the Space Needle, the world's biggest needle. So you can only imagine what he said his number one way to reduce population was. If we do a good job with blank, it's a word that starts with V and then has an A and then a C. But it's exactly what comes out of his mouth. If we do a good job with those V things, then we can bring down the population. And anyhow, in that same 2010 TED Talk, he talks about how we need to raise gas to $5 to $10 a gallon because then people will obviously drive less. It'll be harder to, do all means of transportation. Everything will be more expensive. And then in the end of the talk, he gets into how in Russia, Ukraine area, there's a lot of spent nuclear fuel and how that spent nuclear fuel is the future. What his experimental reactor is building a massive hole essentially in the ground with a container and dumping in this spent fuel and essentially setting it on fire. And he says it'll burn for 50 years and it'll have enough power to power an entire city like Los Angeles 24/7, 365 for 50 years, and it'll put off zero emissions. I find it funny that he chose Wyoming as the site for this experiment because Wyoming's arguably the most beautiful scenery in all of the United States. And it's like, out of all the places you could have put this thing in the ground, Wyoming. But again, he's trying to save the climate or the earth, supposedly. And at the same time he's doing this is when Yellowstone's getting washed away in a once-in-a-thousand-year rain event. Again, you learn this little code of letters and numbers, you'll be amazed at the patterns that you can see in unprecedented weather events. And also just some of the things that are jokes. Last year in California, they were supposedly having this unprecedented Hurricane Hillary that was way overblown in the media, but people didn't catch that Hurricane Hillary was impacting California the day of Bill Clinton's birthday. And again, the Jesuits got jokes for days, but one of my main points is people really need to wake up to the Jesuit cabal, because once you see who these people are, you see what's going on. I'll wrap this up here for a second, but just about this whole thing between Joe Biden and Donald Trump that so many people are caught up in. It's not an accident that Donald Trump's ex-wife fell down the stairs July 14th, 2022, exactly 60 weeks into the first ever Jesuitic nation year, which ran more than a typical calendar year. Earlier that day, before she was announced dead after falling down the stairs, Trump had announced earlier that day that he was going to run in the 60th presidential election. The word order alone equals 60 in gematria, and the Jesuits' original order was made of 60 members. But 60 weeks in, these things happen. His wife dies, and then they bury her on the 201st day of the year, which is July 20th, the anniversary of the moon landing. And for the record, Neil Alden Armstrong equals 201, the first man on the moon when the moon landing's on the 201st day of the year. And of course, that's the object in the sky that's illuminated by the sun. For another 201, it's heliocentrism, which was agreed to in the 16th century, the century of the Jesuits' establishment. But Donald Trump loses his ex-wife, and then she's buried on the 201st day of the year. Now, remember, Joe Biden, he lost his son, Beau Biden, at age 46, years before he became number 46, being elected exactly 46 weeks after the Pope's birthday, when there's 46 books in the Catholic Old Testament. There's also 145 more chapters in the Catholic Old Testament, and that's why Israel was created on 14/5. By the way, State of Israel equals 201, and their first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, died 201 days after the anniversary of its establishment. That's also why Netanyahu stepped down from Israel on the day leaving 201 days left in the year, June 13th, and then came back on 12/29 when the number 1229 is the 201st prime. And he came back on Albert Pike's birthday, who wrote the letter about 3 world wars and how the third world war will be over political Zionism. And not to mention, Albert Pike published that letter about the 3 world wars on August 15th, which is the Jesuit order's birthday. And modern Freemasonry is a Jesuit creation for people who don't know that. But I could tell you a million things about Albert Pike and the January 6th and why that happened 201 days after the Albert Pike statue came down. But anyway, I was making the point about Biden and Trump. So Joe Biden's son, died at 46, exactly 201 days before Pope Francis' birthday. And Inauguration Day in the United States wasn't always January 20th. It used to be March 4th. But January 20th in the majority of the world is written 20/1, a bit like 201, but it's also the 201st day of the United States' age. And just like how the nation's capital didn't start in D.C., it started in Philadelphia, it was moved to D.C. And Washington, D.C. is where the Jesuits set up camp when they first came to this country. That's why Georgetown's there. And it's not an accident that George Washington, even though he's not really the first president, is recognized as the first president, and he became president in 1789, the same year Georgetown was established. Georgetown was established, and then right after that, 2 months later, George Washington's inaugurated. And again, the 201 thing. When Joe Biden first became senator in 72, again, he lost his son, Beau Biden, when he was 72 years old. And it's 72 is big with the Jesuits as well. That's why Pope Francis became the first Jesuit pope on the 72nd day of the year. But back in 1972 is when Biden became senator-elect. And right after he became senator-elect, his wife and daughter died in a car crash on Limestone Road. And go figure, Limestone Road equates to 201. But this number, I go on for days about all the 201s throughout history. It goes back to the beginning of this nation. The only president's name who's ever equaled 201 is James Madison. He's the father of the Constitution. And funny enough, he died at age 85, which is why James Madison, who's hardly ever been in the March Madness tournament ever, is in the 85th tournament. But anyway, this 201 number, you learn about it, you understand why it's the number of the Illuminati. Again, the illuminated ones, 201 represents light in Hebrew, and it's just from the beginning of this nation's history up through the present. Again, you can start to understand why the 3 presidents who died on July 4th, 3 of the first 5 died on 7/4. They were all outspoken critics of the Catholic Church and the Jesuits. Jefferson and Adams penned several letters about their concern about what would happen when the Jesuits came out of suppression, and then they end up dying together on the same day on July 4th. I could go on and on, but anyway, I'll give the floor back to you guys.
Real quick, Zach. Before you go, in your younger days, when you were first coming up, was there any truth seekers or content creators that you were inspired by that gave you? I don't know if I want to say gave you the confidence to pursue this path or anything like that. Was there anybody that inspired you?
I'll tell you what happened, and I'll give you one more 201 that I wish I would have known right out of the gate. I was always super fascinated by Jordan Maxwell. I liked Jordan Maxwell a lot, and he always had his eyes on the Vatican and the Catholic Church and the language, and I was always so fascinated. I remember the first time I heard Jordan Maxwell's thing about Lincoln and Kennedy, it just blew my mind. And again, I don't know why Jordan Maxwell took a lot of interviews, but he never took mine, and it just kills me to this day. R.I.P. to Jordan Maxwell. I could tell you all day why Kennedy died 144 days from meeting with the Pope, and his brother was pronounced dead at 1:44 a.m., and why Lincoln was shot on 14/4. But anyway, here's what had happened when I finally started speaking up. I was in education until 2012. That was my last year as a teacher, the 2011-2012 school year. And that was, or I take it back. It was 2012-13 is what year it was, because it was the year of the Sandy Hook shooting. My last year in teaching was the year Sandy Hook happened. And I was in Washington State, and I love teaching, but there was a major business opportunity out here with the legalization of marijuana, and I started a delivery business for medical patients, which was going great until I started doing this research, and then it's a long story. Everything got destroyed about a year after I'd been putting out this knowledge. But about the big event that had happened that made me realize I really needed to speak out with the information that I knew was after Sandy Hook, the mainstream media was having this major push, especially networks like CNN, to censor people online and to shut down the speech of people who were questioning government events. And they were bringing up Sandy Hook and people who promote 9/11 conspiracy theories. And I thought, wow, this is a really dangerous moment. I'm going to say something before we can't speak anymore online. And it made me research. I wanted to figure out what I'd been looking at for all these years with the number rituals. I knew something was going on with numbers. And it was around that time I found this book and what he wrote, and I started to look into it. But just the other day, it was March 13th. I'm going to close out with this and I'm done. The other week on March 13th, they had to shame Aaron Rodgers for being a Sandy Hook conspiracy theorist. And right away I caught it because I said, oh my God, they're doing this on the anniversary of the Dune Blaine massacre. Because when Sandy Hook happened, it was compared to Dune Blaine. And for people who don't know about Dune Blaine, it got gun rights taken away in the UK. Andy Murray, the tennis star, supposedly survived the Dune Blaine massacre. So there was a major athlete connected to that, like Aaron Rodgers is a major athlete. But the thing about Dune Blaine and Sandy Hook and the similarities of a gunman targeting an elementary school and going after first graders, from Dune Blaine to Sandy Hook, do you want to guess how many months later it is? It's 201 months later. From Dune Blaine to Sandy Hook is 201 months. And the funny thing about picking out Aaron Rodgers, we've always pointed this out about Rodgers. He just, he got traded to the Jets, who play in the 201 area code, and he had to fake his injury on 9/11 when, the anniversary of two towers becoming zero before they became one. But his full name, Aaron Charles Rodgers in gematria, equals 201. And of course, the day before that, they had to tell you that Robert Kennedy Jr. By the way, Robert Kennedy Jr. got in the presidential race April 5th, exactly 144 days after the Superior General's birthday, kind of like how his dad died at 1:44 a.m. officially in the history books. And he's Jesuit educated. He went to Georgetown Prep. But that's why Aaron Rodgers got hammered the next day, because again, they brought those headlines out about RFK Jr. considering him for vice president. But yeah, again, I'd encourage everybody out there. You want to really connect the dots of history, learn this little code at ABC123. For the record, it's based on the alphabetic order forwards and backwards. Case in point, Aaron Charles Rodgers equals 201 when you run the alphabetic order forwards. Aaron Charles Rodgers equals 312 when you run the alphabetic order in reverse. And the headlines were March 12th, 312, as we write it in the U.S., that RFK Jr. was considering him for VP. But yeah, you learn this little code. You'll see through the headlines every day. You'll see all the jokes in the rigged selections. They're not elections, they're selections. Just day after day, you'll have laser vision to see through the headlines, the news, the rigged sports games. And
you know what, Zach? You need to put all that information into AI and see what it mixes up for tomorrow.
Okay. How do I do that? I don't know how to do that.
I bet you it would tell us what the next event is going to be. Because it sounds like you see the pattern there, but you know how they can use AI to make predictions on things. You'd think that it could come up with a good formula to what's going to happen next.
Sure. Just using this knowledge, recently for all the Bitcoin people out there, I told people that by March 12th, Bitcoin would be at 72,000 because it's the 72nd day of the year and Bitcoin equals 72 like money. And sure enough, it was. It was at 72,000. And I told people when it hits that, I said, every time Bitcoin hits these really major milestones, it always falls off. So I said, if you've made a lot of profit by then, it would be smart to cash out and watch what happens. And then when you feel like it's gone back down, maybe buy back in. And it dipped all the way back down to 63,000 after that. Could have bought back in, and it's been going back up. But you learn this knowledge, you'll see how the market's rigged. You'll see how Bitcoin's rigged. And again, you look into Bitcoin, they say a lot of the top engineers are Catholics, which is no surprise. Again, the Jesuits are running all this stuff. And anyway, I'm going to shut up because I took over your guys' show. But thank you for having me on. And I did appreciate the discussion you were having. And
no, we appreciate you. And, Zach, these are people that I talk to offline, so we appreciate you coming over here and participating in the conversation. These are people I got a lot of respect for, so I appreciate you coming by, man.
Yeah. I see one guy in your chat says, what about the number 202? He says, I bet 202 is just as important as 201. Well, understand the numbers are a language. I can't tell you as much about 202 as 201, but I can explain to you why DC's the 202 area code and why the U.S. federal government put out a warning to Americans in Russia that a terrorist attack was coming and to stay away from concerts there, and why that Russian attack just happened on the infamous day, March 22nd, 322, 202 days from Biden's birthday. I can explain that to you. Skull and Bones has the gematria of 202. And of course, Skull and Bones, the secret society at Yale, the movie The Skulls, which Paul Walker was in, that movie came out on his 202nd day of his age. It also came out 201 days after his birthday. You could say 201 days after his birthday or his 202nd day of his age. But yeah, the numbers are a language, and a number like 202 is also connected to things, and it's very important to that secret society, Skull and Bones, which calls itself Order 322. So you can understand why on 322, after the federal government just warned about this in Russia, it's happening 202 days from the face of the U.S. federal government's last birthday, Joe Biden. So, yeah, and case in point, the other year when the Georgia Guidestones fell down, they fell down on George W. Bush's 76th birthday on July 6th. If you use numerology instead of Skull and Bones equaling 202, if you apply numerology to each letter, Skull and Bones equals 76 instead. Yale just upset Auburn on March 22nd. Auburn couldn't score after 76 points. They just got stuck on 76. But I was going to say, the Georgia Guidestones, they came down 201 days after the Pope's birthday, or on the Pope's 202nd day of his age. And again, 201 is important to the Illuminati and the Jesuits. 202 is important to Skull and Bones, which gets its symbolism from the Templars, but is also modeled after the Illuminati. So, again, yeah, the numbers are a language and a code. I chose to talk to you about 201 tonight because it's really important to the Cabal. But there are some other numbers. Now, if you ask me about 203, I can't really tell you anything about 203. You ask me about 200, I don't really know anything about 200. But since you ironically asked about 202, yes, it is another actually important number. So anyway, I will get off, but thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming by. Definitely subscribe to Gematria. Hey, Zach, how many channels have they
Well, that's
they
number
terminated?
25, right? And I used to even have channels that weren't just Gematria Effect News. For a while, I was just Zachary K. Hubbard, and then I was Zachary K. Hubbard Part 2. And, I've been deleted on YouTube a gazillion times, and Facebook, and there's even social media or streaming services that their websites collapsed. And it's just crazy how much I've gotten censored for putting out this information. And it's unfortunate. In 2016, for people who haven't been around, in 2016, that was my breakout year because I called every sports future that year. And sadly, I even called Prince's death. And again, Vanity, his ex-girlfriend, died the day of the 58th Grammys. And there was all these signs that Prince was next. And for people to forget, Prince had a song called Black Donald Trump. Prince died exactly 201 days before Trump supposedly won that rigged selection. So that was even a 201 with Prince. But Prince had the hit song I Would Die For You, and he spelled it with the number 4 and the letter U, used the 21st letter. He died on 4/21, the Queen's birthday. So anyway, I got to get out of here. Otherwise, I'll talk all night. Appreciate it again.
Appreciate it, Zach.
All right, take care.
Kelly, you've been quiet as hell. What's going on, Kelly? You said Google event is coming soon, and we got about 10 minutes left. We're gonna wrap up the show. Wow, appreciate you for coming through, Rich. Kelly, I appreciate you for making this interview happen, or this collaboration happen with RD. So I'm just gonna pass it around. I'm gonna go to ladies first. Kelly, what's your final words? Then we're gonna go to Rich and then RD.
Okay, actually that's perfect because I need to go pick up one of my kids. Oh God, I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting about how different numbers do have specific things that they correlate with. So I know people can say like, oh, what about this number and what about that number? But they do. I wouldn't say maybe every number is special, but there's definitely things that correspond with those numbers. And like you said, it's kind of like a language. It's like not like reading tea leaves, but it's more mathematical, like it goes with something. And I find it all really interesting. That's why I was really quiet. I was just listening. So yeah, it was great tonight. Thank you.
Appreciate you so much for making time, Kelly, and making this collab happen. Rich T, final words?
Well, it was nice to hear from Zach. I've listened to him for so long. I didn't even know you guys was, talking or that you was friends. But Yeah,
Well, Zach played my song on his channel. That's kind of how we
yeah.
came into contact.
But he kind of puts it into concept that like it says in the Bible, we're fighting against more than just flesh and blood. You know, it goes deeper onto a spiritual level. You know, because even the numbers, you know, are a representation of angel codes and shit. So I mean, all this that we've talked about tonight, you know, that you can take it deeper into a spiritual level, that there's something underlying that's hidden from us that is has some kind of inner workings, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, Rich. That's funny as hell, man. Yeah, Zach came out of nowhere. Um, appreciate you making time, Rich. Is that? Did you want to add anything else?
No, it's you know it you know whether we will know or we're just watching what's going to happen next. You know, I just hope that everybody realizes that, you know, take a look around you. You know, try to enjoy the things around you. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in all of our conspiracies and shit, we forget that, you know what, we have power in our own area. What's going on around us, you know, that's pretty much, you know, that's what we have. And you know, take time to appreciate that, and you know, uh, try to take time to realize that, you know what, you're moving things just as well. You go to work, you take care of your kids, you put smiles on their faces, and in some ways you're keeping the bad guys at bay, just having these communications. And you know, it's kind of it boils down to, what can we do about what's going on? Well, the only person that we have to, you know, to change and make a difference is within ourselves. And then, you know, that'll reflect out to others, you know, when they see that. And that's how we make our change.
I appreciate you, Rich. Every time I reach out to you, you make time to come up on here and share that enlightenment. So I definitely got a lot of respect for you, Rich. Definitely subscribe to Rich T on YouTube. I'm gonna have everybody's links in the description and comment section after the show. RD, it was nice to meet you, man. The floor is yours. What's your final words?
Yeah, likewise. It was really fun evening talking about such debaucherous, dastardly things that are going on, and it's sort of nice to have sort of stimulating conversations that are sort of organically generated. I know you sort of had a few things that we wanted to talk about this evening that we didn't get round to. Maybe that will be to be continued. Maybe we'll come back and talk about cults and stuff at another time, because I think that's a little bit of an interesting subject, particularly sort of how YouTube is a breeding ground, it seems, for sort of cult-like behavior. But what can I say as a final word? Nothing really very profound or deeply meaningful, I guess, other than I can sort of concur that detaching from their means of control and enjoying more natural pastimes and sort of going back to the bygone days of being content with playing with a stick in a cardboard box rather than an Xbox, and having Netflix. And sort of, since I left Canada behind and moved to Mexico, where I'm living now, I try so much to spend more time around nature. I've got 3 rescue dogs. I've got a rescue cat. I like spending time with my animals. I like going out walking around in the jungle. Most of all, I like sitting out in the sun. And a lot of the stuff that we pay attention to is disturbing. It's not exactly wholesome entertainment. You know, past ways to pass the time. You could find better ways than researching the internet for dastardly deeds that the powers that shouldn't be are abusing against us. and nature, detaching. This is how they control us. Technology has got us all hooked up. It's got us linked in. It's got us dependent on synthetic dopamine and synthetic interactions. And the more and more we let devices control us, the less human we become. And going out and walking barefoot on the grass or on a beach if you can, you know, doing a bit of gardening, just putting your hands in the earth is a good cleansing ritual. It's getting back to nature, getting back to basics, and never underestimate the sort of power of nature to provide, and never underestimate the powers to manipulate us into behaving accordingly. And in all honesty, an EMP strike would be the best thing for humanity, because it would remove technology from the equation, and we would have to resort to more social interactions for survival. And I think, you know, it's a little dream, but possibly the impossible dream of mine that sort of within our community, if we could reach out to enough channels and sort of people in this community, that we staged a blackout for, you know, a week or a month or however long the time is to be determined. We log out of our devices, we turn them off, we put them in a Mylar bag, we lock them in the microwave and hide it in a corner. And for a month, we just go about our business and don't let their opinions and narrative and technologies control our thoughts and actions. And by doing so, we would dent their abilities to know what we're thinking, because everything we think and say and share via our technology is used against us in a database somewhere, or multiple databases that use everything we say to manipulate us. And they create agendas based on public opinions and what will kind of be palatable and believable when they launch it. But on that note, I will say thank you very much for having me as a guest. This really has been an enjoyable experience. It's suddenly nice to be able to get a word in edgeways and not be spoken over at every moment. But at the end of the day, I'm a knower of nothing and an adjuster of junk. But if you do want to come in and listen to what I got to say, come and subscribe to No One Watches RD. And on that note, thanks, guys. And something I always like to say at the end of all of my videos is everybody take care until next time. May the force be with us. More importantly, let's all be excellent to each other. And that's RD signing out for now.
All right, Kelly, I need an outro song. Hurry up. Help me out.
Man, if you would have told me sooner, I'd have hooked you up an intro and an outro. I do kind of enjoy editing more than I do streaming sometimes, and that's sort of a little bit where Shit Video Productions had its origins from. My poor shit attempts at editing videos become the name for my production company that doesn't exist. But next time, if you want, I'll make you an intro and an outro of the things I enjoy doing.
All right. Kelly, what's your favorite song? I need a...
Oh my God, I
something.
can't even. The only song, exactly. The only song that I keep thinking of is, but this is not a happy, fun outro. I always think it's cool to look up #1 songs during your birthday, but you don't. Okay, the #1 song for April 30th is The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face. So never mind. By Roberta Flack.
Roberta Flack?
Yeah.
Roberta.
It's a very melancholy song.
Roberta Flack. And you said, what's the name of it?
It's something like First Time Ever I Saw Your Face.
Yeah, First Time I Ever Saw Your Face. Okay. All right. So we're going to close it out on that. We're going to close it out on that.
Way back.
Rich, you know who this is?
Oh, yeah. Dude, you got to remember, I grew up in the 70s.
Let's see. Let's see what Kelly talking about. Let's see. All right. Did everybody pull it up? Oh. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Kelly. Marty.
All right, y'all. Peace out.
Bye.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
And remember, fuck the 201.
first time ever I saw your face, I thought the sun
Said I'm gonna cry.
rose in your eyes.
I never heard this. I like this.
It is beautiful, right? I mean,
And the moon and the stars.
He said this is a song played at everybody. Wow.
Were the gifts you gave to the dark.
Wow, she made Killing Me Softly.
And the end
Yep.
of the sky.
I'll have to look up the #1 song for your birthday, Loki.
And the first time ever I kissed your mouth, I felt the earth move in my hand, like the trembling heart of a captive bird that was there at my command, my love. And the first time ever I lay with you, I felt your heart so close to mine.
God, I'm like thinking of every ex-girlfriend ever now.
Our joy would fill the earth and last till the end of time, my love. The first time ever I saw your face, your face, your face, your face.
All right.
The ultimate combo from
okay.
Optimum.
All right, man. Okay. All right, y'all. We'll catch you on the next one. Salute.